His hands were already under my shirt when I hit the dryer behind me. The hum vibrated up my spine, the scent of fabric softener, thick in the air, like clean lies. He didn't ask. He just moved closer, the mouth on my collarbone breath, dragging warmth across the skin. I hadn't let anyone touch like this in years. The overhead bulb flickered low yellow, exposing. I kept one hand behind me, gripping the edge of the folding table, like it could anchor me to the version of myself I was trying to remember. His weight pressed into my hips, slow at first, then deep. I gasped. Every inch filled something in me I hadn't named until it was already happening. My knee knocked the open detergent bottle. It rocked, but didn't fall. I couldn't move to fix it. I could barely breathe. His hand was on my lower back, guiding. The dryer rattled again, and I swallowed a sound that wasn't pain, not really. It stung, but I didn't stop him. I leaned back, harder. I'd gone years without being touched. And then I let this happen. I'm 39, married, tired in a way you can't explain without sounding ungrateful. You know the type, the kind of exhaustion that creeps into your bones, not from work, not from parenting, but from never being looked at the same way twice. He's 31. Not a stranger that would have made more sense. He was my husband's co-worker, came over to help patch drywall after the leak, came back to help install shelves in the laundry, came again just to say hi. I knew what I was doing when I started wearing that fitted shirt, the one that clings when I reach up. I told myself it was hot that day. It wasn't. I used to think loneliness was silent, but it's not. It has a heartbeat, and it pounds in your ears when someone finally puts their hand on your lower back and doesn't pull it away. What would you do if the comfort you needed came from the one person you were never supposed to feel that way about? Because it wasn't sudden, it was slow. A quiet accumulation of glances, his hand brushing mine when he handed me a screwdriver. The way he looked at me, not like I was his buddy's wife, like I was a secret he wanted to keep. That first time wasn't planned. We didn't kiss. We didn't even speak. We just stood too close. I turned around too fast, bumped into him, and I didn't step back. There's a moment right before something happens where you could still stop it. I didn't. I let him press into me, let him slide his hand down the back of my jeans like he'd done it before. I let the air thicken around us. The walls go quiet, the lines blur, and in that laundry room under a flickering bulb and the steady hum of a machine that never questioned me, I did the one thing I swore I never would. I let go. If you've ever reached for comfort in the wrong place, not because you meant to, but because you didn't know where else to go, this story may feel familiar. Like and subscribe. Staying through helps these stories reach the people who quietly need them. Let's begin. The morning after, I folded towels, like nothing had happened. I stood at the same folding table, the one he had pressed me into just hours earlier, and smoothed each edge as if it would erase the way my body still ached. My husband was in the living room, laughing at some YouTube video, his voice rising in that oblivious, trusting way that made my stomach tighten. I wasn't supposed to feel guilty, not because what happened wasn't wrong, but because it didn't feel like cheating. It felt like responding to years of silence, of absence, of being treated like a fixture instead of a woman. He had barely touched me in months, not in anger, not in resentment, just in slow forgetting. That's the thing about marriage when it starts dying. It doesn't scream, it just goes quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you forget you ever had a voice. I met Ryan at a company cookout 2 years ago. He was younger but not boyish, the kind of man who had grown into his confidence, a little cocky, but more observant than he let on. He was always the one offering to help the one staying after everyone else had gone to clean up, to carry boxes, to fix things nobody asked him to fix. He wasn't flirtatious, not openly, but he looked at me like I wasn't invisible. And that alone was dangerous. He started coming around more when my husband tore his rotator cuff. said he'd help with the heavy lifting. I offered him iced tea on hot days, and he took it with a thank you that always lingered. He didn't stare. He scanned, like he was learning me, and I let him. There was one day I remember clearly, before anything ever happened. I was in the garage struggling to lift a box of old Christmas decorations. He walked in without knocking, took it from me without asking. Our hands brushed. Nothing dramatic. But my chest stayed tight for the next hour. That's how it started. Not with lust, with attention. You don't realize how touch-starved you are until someone grazes your shoulder and it makes your eyes sting. I told myself I was imagining it. The pauses in conversation, the way he waited until we were alone to make jokes that weren't quite jokes. But there was one afternoon that changed everything. The washer had stopped mid-cycle, and I called him because my husband was at a conference. He showed up 30 minutes later. No tools, just a grin and a shrug. It's probably nothing, just a loose connection. But he didn't go straight to the machine. He lingered in the doorway watching me wipe my hands on a dish towel. The silence was thick, tighter than usual, the kind that hangs before something snaps. I should have handed him the instruction manual and walked away. Instead, I offered coffee. He sat on the stool by the counter, and we talked. About nothing. The weather. His terrible landlord. My garden that never grew right. But the words weren't the point. The point was, we didn't want the moment to end. And then he reached over, maybe to take the sugar I'd set out, maybe to touch me. I still don't know. But his fingers grazed mine. I didn't flinch. He looked at me for too long. And I didn't look away. I'd always believed I was the type who would never, and suddenly I wasn't so sure. What do you do when someone sees you not as a mother? Not as a wife, but as a woman who still wants, still aches, still breathes. You either run, or you inch closer. I didn't run. We didn't touch again that day. But something shifted. The silence got louder, the air more electric. He started fixing things that didn't need fixing. I started leaving the side door unlocked. There's a loneliness that lives in a home like mine. A quiet, polite one, the kind you decorate with throw pillows and candle scents. And when someone new steps into that vacuum, it doesn't take much for the whole foundation to start shaking. I didn't want Ryan. Not at first. I wanted to feel something, and when I finally did, I couldn't pretend it didn't matter. It was a Tuesday when I realized I'd memorized the sound of his footsteps. I was upstairs folding laundry again, and I heard the side door creak open. My husband had taken the truck to the dealership. Ryan had promised to swing by and check the garage door, which had been sticking apparently. I didn't need it fixed, but I let him come anyway. I paused in the hallway, clutching a damp bath towel like it was armor. I heard him shut the door softly, the way someone does when they know they don't fully belong. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't call out. I waited. And I listened to each footstep as he crossed the tile floor. It wasn't suspense. It was something worse, expectation. My body knew what I was doing before I did. I moved down the stairs, slow, quiet, like I was stepping into something I couldn't step out of. He was bent over the garage door panel, sleeves pushed up, forearms dusted in grime. He looked up at me just once and didn't say anything. I handed him a towel. Our fingers brushed again. I think about that moment more than I should. We didn't speak for nearly 5 minutes after that. He fiddled with the screws. I stood leaning against the wall like a woman who hadn't planned for this but didn't want to leave. I think it's just the track, he said, finally straightening up. Could be warped from the heat. He wiped his forehead, leaving a smudge of grease above his eyebrow. I almost reached out to brush it away. But I didn't. I froze instead. And so did he. The tension was so thick I could hear our breathing. Then movement upstairs. A soft thud from the bedroom. My husband was back. We broke apart like kids getting caught with cigarettes. Ryan cleared his throat. "I'll come back later. No rush." He didn't even wait for a reply. That was the moment it became dangerous. Not because something happened, but because it didn't. Because we were both holding something between us we weren't ready to drop. After that, the glances lasted longer. The texts came later in the day. Need help with anything else? No rush. But I can swing by if the gate's still acting up. Little things. Always something to fix. And I let him. He started staying longer, sitting at the kitchen counter while I made dinner, talking to me like I was the only person in the house. Once he reached for a plate just as I did. Our hands met. He didn't pull back. Neither did I. "You okay?" he asked one night, his voice softer than usual. I nodded. You sure that was the first time I lied to him? It was also the first time I realized I didn't want him to stop asking. I started noticing how quiet my life had become. Not peaceful silent. My husband sat in his recliner with a beer watching TV, with the volume too high. He hadn't asked how my day was in over a week. Maybe longer. And Ryan noticed everything. That I'd cut my hair. That I wore earrings again. That I started humming while I cooked. "You seem different lately," he said once. Lighter. I didn't know whether to thank him or apologize. We were in the garage when it finally cracked. He was fixing a shelf that didn't need fixing. I was holding the flashlight. He reached for a screw and our arms brushed. Not like before. This was deliberate. His hand slid just enough to stay close. My fingers trembled, and then he stopped pretending. "I shouldn't say this," he said without looking at me, "but I think about you." I froze. "I'm not trying to cause anything," he added quickly, but I had to say it. I should have told him to stop. I should have left the garage. Instead, I whispered, "I think about you too." He looked at me then. Really looked. No smirk. No charm. Just tension. And something more dangerous hope. The next 5 seconds stretched into a decade. He stepped closer. I stepped back. But only one step. And then I didn't move again. We didn't kiss that day. We didn't touch. But the air between us changed. It wasn't playful anymore. It wasn't a game. It was weight. Heat. Something coiled and ready to break. That night I couldn't sleep. I watched the bedroom ceiling for hours, counting the slow, even breaths of the man beside me, the man who had no idea I had already crossed the point of no return. It wasn't the kiss I felt guilty about. It was everything before it. The glances, the almosts, the knowing silence. You don't need lips to betray someone. You just need to want what they're not. It was raining that night. That soft curtain kind of rain, the kind that makes everything feel slower, softer, more dangerous. He texted around 8:15. "Still need help with the shelf." I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed deleted and typed again. Doors open. Kitchen lights on. My husband had gone to bed early. He had a headache, he said. He'd taken 2 Advil and disappeared upstairs before the second commercial break of some war documentary he wasn't even watching. I waited in the kitchen, sitting on the edge of a chair, trying to look like I wasn't waiting. I didn't hear him come in, just sensed him, the shift in air, the sudden nearness behind me. When I turned, he was already standing in the doorway, soaked through shirt, clinging to his chest hair damp and curling at the edges. "Hi," he said. I couldn't speak. The kitchen was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking clock above the window. I stood up slowly and walked past him toward the hallway. He followed footsteps barely audible on the tile. I led him into the laundry room. It was warm from the dryer still spinning. The scent of clean fabric and faint detergent filled the space. A single yellow bulb buzzed overhead. It felt like a secret, and we both knew why we were here. He closed the door softly behind him. Neither of us said anything. I backed up until I hit the dryer. He stepped closer. His hands didn't rush. They hovered, one on my hip, the other brushing a strand of hair from my face. My chest rose, waiting. wanting, dreading. "Are you sure?" he whispered. I nodded, but it came out as breath. And then, it happened. Not slow, not rushed, just desperate. Like both of us had been holding our breath for too long and finally let it out. He pressed against me, mouth warm and uncertain, and I kissed him back like I was afraid someone might hear, even though no one could. His hands trembled slightly as they moved over my back like he was trying to memorize me. I grabbed his shirt, felt the dampness between my fingers. When he lifted me up onto the dryer, I gasped, partly from the cold metal, partly from the sudden weight of it all. He stood between my knees, forehead pressed to mine, breathing hard. "I don't know what this is," he whispered. "Don't name it," I said. "Just don't stop." And he didn't. I don't know how long it lasted. All I remember are pieces, the hum of the dryer, the way my nails dug into his shoulders, the way he pressed deeper, slower, then stopped just long enough for me to look into his eyes and see every mistake I was about to make, and still not stop. I remember clinging to the edge of the dryer, to his neck, to whatever this was raw and wrong and so needed. Every movement felt like both a relief and a mistake. It didn't feel like lust. It felt like need, the kind that shows up after too many months of being untouched, after too many nights lying beside someone who stopped noticing you, after too many fake smiles and folded towels and silent dinners. I didn't cry, not during, but I came close, not because of him, not entirely, but because of how seen I felt. Not beautiful, not desirable, just real. Touched like a person, not a role. When it was over, he stepped back, breath-ragged chest heaving. I slid down from the dryer legs, shaking slightly, gripping the edge to steady myself. Neither of us spoke. We just stood there, still breathing each other's air. "Finally," he said. I didn't mean to. But he didn't finish the sentence. I pulled my sleeve back down, fixed my hair in the reflection of the dryer door. It was fogged from our breath. I opened the laundry room door, checked the hallway. Silent. I turned to him. "Go now." He nodded, when he slipped out the back door. The rain had turned to mist. I waited until I couldn't hear his footsteps anymore before walking to the sink. I ran the water hands shaking and splashed my face once, twice. In the mirror above the stove, I didn't look guilty. I just looked awake. That was the worst part. It didn't feel like a betrayal. It felt like waking up after years of sleep. The next morning, I couldn't meet my own eyes in the mirror. I stood in the bathroom brushing my teeth, like every other day robe's cinched tight hair pushed back with a clip. But everything underneath felt different, off. Like I'd peeled something back I couldn't reseal. At breakfast, I poured my husband's coffee without looking at him. He mumbled thanks, eyes never lifting from his phone. He scrolled, sipped, cleared his throat. The same rhythm, the same quiet. I sat across from him, hands folded, and felt like I'd aged 10 years in one night. He didn't notice. That should have brought relief. It didn't. The worst guilt wasn't what I'd done. It was how little it changed what was already broken. Mark didn't text me. Not that day. Not the next. And I didn't text him either, but I kept checking my phone. Over and over. Like a habit I hadn't earned. That Saturday, I saw him again. The neighborhood cookout. The one we always went to together. He was across the yard laughing with someone near the grill. Same black t-shirt, same crooked smile. But he wouldn't look at me. Not once. I held a red cup of soda in my hand so tightly it left an imprint. Eventually I slipped inside the house to use the bathroom, even though I didn't need to. I just couldn't stand being near him without touching him. I leaned against the hallway wall, tried to catch my breath. Then I heard it, his steps. Slower now, cautious. He turned the corner. We both froze. "Hi," I said, too quiet. His eyes scanned the hallway. Empty. He stepped forward, not touching me, not yet. "This was a mistake," he whispered. I nodded. We both stood there, knowing that, still not leaving. It doesn't feel like a mistake, I whispered. He pressed his forehead to mine, breath shallow. I haven't stopped thinking about it. Neither had I. We didn't kiss. Not that time. But the weight of not kissing was heavier. That night I dreamed about the laundry room. And the next time I saw him just 3 days later, it happened again. This time it was the back seat of his car. The windows fogged fast. The leather was cold against my legs. He kissed me like he needed it, like I was the only thing keeping him from splintering. Every movement felt familiar now. Every position a reminder that I had crossed something that could no longer be undone. And it hurt. Not the kind of hurt you run from. The kind you return to because it tells you you're still alive. Each time was different. Each time I swore it would be the last. I kept saying I didn't need it, but I kept asking anyway. Once in the pantry, once in the garage, once with the sound of my husband upstairs taking a phone call. I told myself it was just physical, just comfort, just a moment. But every time I tried to walk away, I came back a little faster. I started noticing things I never used to. The way Mark stood close behind me when we passed in the hallway. The way his hand would linger on my back just a second too long. The way I missed it when he didn't do it. I was unraveling, and still, I couldn't stop. Then came the night he didn't show. He always came around 8, just like the first time. I'd leave the door unlocked, the lamp on the kitchen clean. But that night, nothing. No text. No knock. No whisper behind me. I waited. Until almost midnight. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just addicted to the comfort. I was addicted to him. To being seen. Wanted. Pulled in like gravity. When you go years without being touched, not just physically but emotionally, even the wrong touch starts to feel holy. He wasn't my savior, but for a while, he made me forget I needed one.